Hey guys, welcome back to another WoW Classic video, and in this episode we're going to be discussing the races of Azeroth. World of Warcraft is a world built on war and conflict. The races of Azeroth have found themselves choosing sides and allying in order to stay safe from their many enemies and the creatures that roam it. Two factions have come of this, the Horde and the Alliance. Choosing a faction means choosing a side in a war, so consider the following carefully. Firstly, we have the Alliance. The four races which make up the Alliance are the Dwarves, the Gnomes, the Humans, and the Night Elves. Each race has access to a limited number of classes to choose from, so let's say you want to play a Hunter. The only races which can play a Hunter on the Alliance side are the Night Elves and the Dwarves. With that in mind, each race also has a table of starting statistics. For example, a Dwarf Hunter starts with 22 Strength, 19 Agility, 24 Stamina, 19 Intellect, and 20 Spirit. Whereas a Night Elf Hunter starts with 17 Strength, 28 Agility, 20 Stamina, 20 Intellect, and 20 Spirit. Now, you can see the huge difference between their stats. The Night Elf beats the Dwarf in Agility by a whole 9 points. That might not seem like a lot, but that Agility is equal to your crit chance, dodge chance, and attack power, which overall increases your damage output, resulting in killing enemies faster. But at the same time, the Dwarf has 4 more stamina than the Night Elf, meaning that the Dwarf can take more damage. Each race has a unique set of statistics that correlates with what class you choose. For example, Tauren warriors have the highest naked strength and stamina stat for the Horde side, whereas Dwarf warriors have the highest naked strength and stamina stat for Alliance. Meaning in terms of raw base stats, these two races work best with the warrior class in terms of base stats. However, as you've probably already figured out, each class and race combination has different base stats, and some being better than others, but does that really matter in the endgame? In my personal opinion, I'm gonna have to go with no and say it's probably not that important. There's more important reasons to choose a specific race that you want to play for one very important reason, and that's the racial traits each one gets. Starting with the Alliance, we have the Dwarves. Their most notable racial is Stoneform. On a 3-minute cooldown, it increases your armor by 10% for 8 seconds, as well as removing and granting immunity to poisons, disease, and bleed effects. I can't think of any better time than to use this when a rogue or druid has all their bleeds and poisons on you, and after they've used their entire rotation to apply all these bleeds, you use Stoneform just to remove all their hard work in an instant. They also have treasure finding, which works just like when you search for a herb or a mining node. A little gold dot will appear, signifying a cache of sorts, whether it be a food, a water box, or an actual treasure chest. Plus 10 to cold resistance, which I guess can be a little handy and reduce damage taken by frost attacks. And a gun specialization, that increases their skill with plus 5, giving them a higher hit chance against mobs. Next, we have the Gnomes. Their most notable racial is Escape Artist. It's on a 1-minute 30 cooldown and breaks all existing root and snare effects on them. They have Expansive Mind, which increases their intellect by a total of 5%, resulting in larger mana pools. Arcane Resistance gives them a plus 10 to resist arcane magic, meaning you take lower damage from arcane spells overall, or even have a chance at resisting a spell completely. And the last one being Technologist, increasing their skill in engineering by plus 15, meaning they can have 315 out of 300 total skill in engineering at max level. I'd say it's pretty useful as engineering is vital for PvP in Classic WoW, and those early levels could give you a bit of a boost. Next, we have Humans. An ability they no longer have in BFA, but was amazing for human rogues back in Classic, was Perception. It was on a 3-minute cooldown and increased your stealth detection drastically by 10 yards. It lasted for 20 seconds and was a pretty unfair advantage when dueling other rogues or druids, as they could pop Perception and pretty easily find the other stealther within a few seconds. Human Spirit. They would gain a 5% increase, resulting in slightly higher health and mana regeneration. Now, I know it doesn't sound that important, but stat weights work differently in Classic to what they do today in BFA. So having that 5% increase meant less downtime in between mob pulls, meaning a slightly faster pull rate with mobs out in the world. Diplomacy. This trait can significantly reduce the amount of reputation needed to reach Exalted with a faction. It's a 10% increase to reputation gains, meaning faster exalted rep and less time grinding daily and repetitive quests or mob grinds. Sword and Mace Specialization. Again, with a +5 bonus to this skill, it increases your overall hit chance against enemies equal to higher level than you. And lastly, for the Alliance, we have the Night Elves. Now, while only rogues and druids can use the ability Stealth, all Night Elves have access to the ability Shadow Meld. It lasts until cancelled and has a 10-second timer. However, it can only be used when out of combat and you cannot move, or else it will break the Shadow Meld. Quickness. With this trait, Night Elves gain a 1% increase to dodge chance. Pretty straightforward. Wisp Spirit. Now, when all the other races die, they run around as a ghostly form of themselves. However, when Night Elves die, they turn into a wisp, just like from Warcraft 3, the little workers you used to have. They gain a 50% increased speed bonus to run back to their bodies, a great trait if you spend a lot of time dying. And last, we have Nature Resistance, increasing your resistance by an extra +10, meaning less nature damage overall. Now that we've looked at all the Alliance traits, let's take a look at what the Horde has to offer. And in no particular order, we have the Undead. Their most notable trait is Will of the Forsaken. When activated, it makes you immune to fear, sleep, and charm effects for 5 seconds. It can also be used to break free from already existing fear, sleep, and charm effects, and has a 2-minute cooldown. One that I'm sure everyone knows and remembers fondly when you would be ganked by an undead rogue was Cannibalize. To add insult to injury, when they ganked you, when activated it would restore 7% of your total health every 2 seconds for a maximum of 10 seconds. However, you may only use this ability on humanoids or undead corpses. Underwater Breathing. This allows you to spend 300% more time underwater than any other race. Not a really useful ability, as there are items and buffs in game that allow you to breathe infinitely underwater anyway. A bit of wasted potential if you ask me. And lastly, Shadow Resistance, giving you a +10 to Shadow Resist. Next, we have the Orc. Blood Fury. It'll increase your melee attack power by 25%, while decreasing your healing spells and effects on you by 50%. It lasts for 15 seconds and has a 2-minute cooldown. Not an ability I would recommend having on your action bar when tanking, as it will probably result in your death or just the healer. But in PvP, if you're going to die anyway, why not let loose and go for it? Just as a reminder, on the tooltip, sorry hunters, but this ability won't work for your ranged abilities. It will only work for melee attack power and not ranged, so sorry about that one. Hardiness. I'd say this is probably one of the most noteworthy, as I remember playing Classic as a Night Elf rogue, and I would avoid ever fighting an orc like the Plague, as they had a 25% chance to resist stun effects, and if my cheap shot or kidney shot was resisted, I was in pretty serious trouble, or I was dead. Command. This ability will increase the damage of your pets by an additional 5%. This only works for hunters and warlocks, as they are the only classes that have access to pets. Axe Specialization. +5 to axe skill, meaning a higher hit chance against mobs similar level to you or higher. Troll. I'd actually have to say, out of all races, the Troll falls fairly short on the racials table. They have Regeneration. Health regeneration rate increased by 10%. 10% of total health regeneration may continue during combat. Beast Slaying. Damage dealt versus beasts increased by 5%. Bow Specialization. Skill with bow weapons increased by +5. Throwing Specialization. Skill with throwing weapons increased by +5. Now, Throwing Specialization is complete and utter garbage. Bow Specialization is okay. Beast Slaying is somewhat handy in the sense that you kill a lot of beasts while leveling. And the regeneration one is basically a meme at this point. Like, woohoo! I regen 5 HP during a 20-second fight. However, they do have Berserking. It increases your attack speed by 10 to 30%. At full health, the speed increase is 10%, with a greater effect up to 30% if you're badly injured when you activate Berserking. It lasts 10 seconds. Now, that's great and all, but you've basically got to be near death for it to be really effective at all, at which point you've used it and now you're probably dead anyway. Good job, Blizzard. Next, we have the Tauren. Most notable, War Stomp. 1 second cast timer, 2 second stun on a 2-minute cooldown. It will stun up to 5 opponents within 8 yards of you. Pretty handy if you're surrounded and need to stop damage for a moment, so your healer can catch up, or to slow or even stop the escape of an enemy. Endurance. This trait increases your maximum health by 5%, resulting in the largest health pools in Classic WoW, making them one of the best tanks for late game. Cultivation, a plus 15 to herbalism. I know it doesn't sound too useful, but I think most people forget when you would pick herbs in Classic, you actually had a chance to fail at picking the herb, so with the plus 15, that's a less chance of failing. And lastly, nature resistance, similar to the Night Elf, a plus 10 resistance to nature damage. In my personal opinion, when choosing what race to play, choose what fits best with what your goals are. Sure, if you want to be a method number 1 raider, you're probably going to have to choose the best class and race combinations. But for the rest of us who just enjoy the game and still want to be good, choose what you like. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to spend a lot of time looking at that character model, so choose something that's easy on the eyes. With that being said, I think that wraps up this video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up and a comment, and maybe even subscribe to help me out. Thanks a lot guys, I'll see you in the next video. Catch. I'll leave a table up at the end of the video that you guys can pause and have a look at for the base stats of each race and class combination. Cheers.